Imagine a computer program written before the internet existed, before the iPhone, before AI. A program running on a machine with less processing power than the microwave in your kitchen. In 1972, this machine spat out a prediction that terrified the researchers at M1T. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't a calculation error. It was a timeline. The machine looked at our world, our population, our greed, our factories, and our food, and it calculated the exact date when the party ends. For decades, we laughed at it. We called it doomsday nonsense. We pointed to the stock market, to our smartphones, to our skyscrapers, and said, "Look, we are winning." But recently, a lead analyst at KPMG, one of the biggest accounting firms in the world, decided to check the math again. She wanted to see if the 1972 prediction was wrong. Her conclusion? The computer wasn't wrong. It was terrifyingly accurate. In fact, we might be ahead of schedule. If the models hold true, the world as you know it, internet, supermarkets, electricity, peace, has about 15 years left. Welcome to the business as usual scenario. Welcome to 2040. We like to think we are special, that modern civilization is immune to the laws of history. But if you zoom out, history is just a graveyard of empires that thought they would last forever. The Romans, the Mayans, the Qing dynasty, the Aztecs. Some fell overnight, like Pompeii under the ash. Others, like the Aztecs, crumbled in just 93 days of war. Most, however, died a slow, agonizing death of economic decay. Historians debate the details, but the collapse of complex societies almost always boils down to four horsemen: political instability, social and cultural division, environmental catastrophe, economic failure. Today, we are wealthier than the Caesars could have ever dreamed. You, watching this video, have access to spices that wars were fought over, delivered to your door in 24 hours. You have the sum of human knowledge in your pocket. We are like a jet engine compared to a donkey cart. We are faster, higher, and more powerful. But here is the problem with jet engines. They are fragile. One loose screw, one blocked fuel line, and the whole thing explodes. A donkey cart can lose a wheel and keep moving. A complex global economy cannot. And in 1972, MIT found the loose screw. The study was called The Limits to Growth. The tool they used was a system dynamics model called World 3. To understand why this matters, you have to understand that before this, economics was mostly guesswork. But World 3 was different. It didn't just look at one thing like, how much oil do we have? It looked at feedback loops. Think of a microphone next to a speaker. A small sound goes in, gets amplified, comes out the speaker, goes back into the mic, and gets amplified again. Screech. That is a positive feedback loop. World 3 modeled the entire planet as a series of these loops. It tracked 5 critical variables: population, how many of us are there; industrial output, how much stuff are we making; food production, can we eat; resources, oil, gas, metals, pollution. What are we dumping back into nature? The logic was simple. More people mean we need more food. To grow more food, we need more industrial machinery, tractors, fertilizer. To run that machinery, we need more resources. Burning those resources creates pollution. For a long time, everything goes up. It feels like a golden age. We call this growth. But the computer saw what the human mind struggles to grasp: exponential growth in a finite container. You cannot have infinite growth on a planet with finite atoms. Eventually, the bill comes due. The researchers ran the simulation over and over again. They changed the variables. They assumed we found more oil. They assumed we invented nuclear fusion. They assumed we recycled everything. It didn't matter. In almost every scenario, the lines on the graph didn't just flatten. They crashed. The most famous scenario the computer spit out was called business as usual, BAU. This scenario assumed that humans would act, well, like humans. We wouldn't radically change our lifestyle. We wouldn't stop consuming. We would just keep pushing for more profit, more growth, and more comfort. So, what does the BAU timeline look like? 1970 to 2000. The boom. Population explodes. Industrial output skyrockets. We pull billions out of poverty. Technology advances rapidly. This matches our reality perfectly. 2000 to 2020. The peak. Growth starts to slow down, but we are still getting richer. However, the costs of extraction start rising. It takes more energy to get the next barrel of oil than it did the last one. Pollution, plastic in the oceans, carbon in the air, starts to accumulate faster than the planet can absorb it. 2020 to 2030. The turning point. This is where we are right now. According to the model, this is the decade where industrial output peaks. Why? Because resources are becoming too expensive to extract, and the environmental damage is starting to destroy capital. We have to spend so much money fixing climate disasters, filtering water, and fighting for resources that we can't invest in growth anymore. And then comes the drop. 2030 to 2040. The collapse. As industrial output falls, the agricultural system fails. Modern farming is basically a way of turning oil into food via fertilizers and transport. If industry fails, food fails. When food fails, population doesn't just level off, it crashes. The model predicts a sharp decline in human population starting around 2040. Not because people stop having kids, but because the death rate skyrockets. It sounds like science fiction. But remember the KPMG study I mentioned? In 2021, they took 50 years of actual real-world data and overlaid it on the 1972 charts. The lines matched almost perfectly. We are tracking the business-as-usual collapse scenario. In fact, on some metrics, we are slightly ahead of the collapse schedule. Now, I know what you're thinking. But look at us. We have AI. We have electric cars. Elon Musk is worth $200 billion. We are richer than ever. Are we? The video you watched earlier raised a fascinating point. Who was the richest person in history? Mansa Musa? Rockefeller? No, it's the modern tech titan. But wealth is relative. Rockefeller couldn't buy air conditioning. He couldn't buy antibiotics. A middle-class person today lives better than a king in 1850. But this comfort creates a dangerous illusion. It blinds us to fragility. We have built a system that relies on just-in-time efficiency. Your supermarket has only 3 days of food. Your hospital has limited oxygen. Your bank account is just digits on a server. The 1972 MIT study highlighted something called diminishing returns. Think of it like squeezing a lemon. The first squeeze gives you lots of juice, the Industrial Revolution. The second squeeze gives you a bit less, the computer age. Now, we are squeezing the rind. We are spending trillions of dollars just to keep the lights on. We are inventing technologies that don't increase productivity, like algorithms designed to keep you addicted to TikTok. That counts as GDP, but does it actually help civilization survive? The model suggests that right before the collapse, things look their best. The stock market hits record highs. Consumption is at its peak. The system is running at 100% capacity. But a system running at 100% has 0% buffer for error. There was one scenario in the MIT report that didn't end in total doom. They called it the comprehensive technology scenario. In this version, humanity manages to invent its way out of trouble. We develop infinite clean energy, fusion. We figure out how to recycle 100% of our materials. We stabilize our population voluntarily. If we do this, the collapse is avoided. Standard of living stays high. We reach a state of equilibrium. This is the path of the optimist. This is the path of Silicon Valley. Don't worry, AI will fix the climate. SpaceX will mine asteroids. But there is a catch. The KPMG analyst found that we are not on this trajectory. To be on this path, we needed to start massive changes decades ago. Technology takes time. It took 50 years for oil to replace coal. It took 50 years for the car to replace the horse. We don't have 50 years. We have 15. Furthermore, technology often accelerates consumption. When cars became more fuel efficient, did we use less gas? No. We drove more. We built bigger cars. This is Jevons paradox. Efficiency leads to more consumption, not less. If we invent a way to mine the ocean floor, we won't use it to save the Earth. We will use it to build more throwaway electronics, generating more heat and more waste, speeding up the very cycle we are trying to stop. The scariest part of the MIT model wasn't the pollution or the lack of food. It was the social reaction. When the economic pie stops growing, people stop cooperating. When everyone is getting richer, we can afford peace. Why fight when we can trade? But when the pie shrinks, when there isn't enough water for both the farm and the city, when there isn't enough oil for your tank and the army's tank, history tells us what happens. The social and cultural collapse happens before the starvation. We are already seeing the cracks. Polarization, inequality, distrust in institutions, the breakdown of the global order. Nations are hoarding resources. Trade walls are going up. The MIT computer didn't model war specifically, but war is the inevitable result of the resource graph hitting zero. If the business-as-usual model holds, the 2013s will not be a time of innovation. They will be a time of desperate hoarding. So, is it over? Should you just give up? The 1972 researchers didn't publish this report to tell us we were dead. They published it as a warning, a radar ping. They wanted to show that you cannot run an infinite system on a finite planet forever. The fact that we have followed their worst-case scenario for 50 years is a tragedy of leadership and human nature. We chose short-term profit over long-term survival every single time. But models are not destiny. They are maps. We know where the cliff is. We can see it clearly now, thanks to a 50-year-old computer code. We have a choice. We can try to pivot, sacrificing some growth today to ensure we exist tomorrow. We can embrace the stabilized world scenario, accepting that enough is actually enough. Or we can keep our foot on the accelerator. We can chase the quarterly profits, the next viral hit, the next gadget, right up until the engine seizes. The computer says we have until 2040. But looking at the world outside your window, it feels like the deadline might be sooner.